Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Now, before we get started talking about this new Slaughter to Prevail record, I've got some exciting and fun news for you. Turns out Chompy has become a little bit of a celebrity here on the Metal Meltdown. People love you, Chompy. They love you. They love you with all their hearts, and in light of this knowledge, in light of this undying love and appreciation for our lovable mascot Chompy, I've decided we're going to do a very limited, I can't stress this enough, very limited merch run. We're going to do like maybe 30, 50 shirts tops. Only problem is, I don't know what kind of design I want to use, so what you need to do is you need to go to the community tab of this channel, which is where you will decide what our good friend Chompy will be doing on this t-shirt. Perhaps he'll be listening to his favorite tunes with a bottle of Jack Daniels. Perhaps he'll be fucking bathing in a pool of blood, munching on some body parts. I don't know. It's literally up to you to decide. You've got roughly about a week. After that, I will make the decision based on whoever's in the lead. Then we contact the designer. Then a bunch of other shit. I honestly don't know. I've never put much thought into this. I've never done much research. Here's what I do know. Y'all love Chompy, and he loves you, and he cannot wait to see you in this very cool t-shirt. So make sure you go to the community tab of the channel and vote. Or don't. I don't know. Your call. Chompy's going to be pretty upset if you do that, though. Just a heads up. Alright. Now that we got that out of the way, you can stay here, Chompy. It's okay. Let's talk about this brand new studio album from Slaughter to Prevail. Kostolom is the sophomore studio album from Russian deathcore crew Slaughter to Prevail, and depending on who you ask, quite possibly the most important deathcore album of the year. That's a pretty bold statement, considering we've had some massive releases from Lorna Shore and Brand of Sacrifice already, not to mention some big records on the way from Carnifex and Shadow of Intent, but the fact that people are even making this statement should tell you how much of an impact Slaughter to Prevail have had on the genre in a remarkably small amount of time. They've sold tons of records, they have multiple singles across multiple digital platforms with millions upon millions of streams. The song Baba Yaga in particular was so popular upon its release a few months ago that it has since inspired hundreds, if not thousands, of wildly popular reaction videos, including a few from some of my peers like Jamie Horsley and Forge Master Metal Reviews. Now, despite all of that, I have not personally paid much attention to Slaughter to Prevail at all. I remember when their debut album came out, but I cannot remember if I reviewed it in any capacity whatsoever. So as a result, I've more or less gone blind into Kostolom, aware of the hype and anticipation around it, but not really aware as to what specifically it would offer. And now that I've spent a respectable amount of time analyzing and dissecting this thing, I can very honestly say that I'm kind of underwhelmed. I mean, this is not a terrible record by any stretch, but it never rises above being competent for me either. It is an incredibly generic, repetitive display of vulgarity and cookie-cutter breakdowns that is mildly entertaining in small bursts, but not to the point where I would pick up this album on vinyl, or pick up a CD, or not even to the point where I would download it off Spotify onto my phone or something. I was totally 100% fine with it while it was on, occasionally bobbing my head, but the moment it turned off, I kind of forgot about it until I decided that I should analyze it further for the sake of this review. There are definitely some highlights, don't get me wrong. The aforementioned Baba Yaga in particular stands out as almost inarguably the best song on the album. There's a very moody, angsty chorus that feels like some kind of cross between the earliest works from Deftones and Slipknot. There are a lot of nasty percussive beatdowns, some very brutal, muscular, thick riffery. I'm particularly loving Alex Terrible's super low vocal register. I mean, there are some really deep gutturals that I have to assume he is summoning from the bowels of hell, let alone his own physical bowels. The track Made in Russia as well has a distinctively explosive kind of nu metal edge to it, with some really bouncy, raucous grooves and some wild, frantic vocals. It does come dangerously close to being blatant Slipknot worship, but fuck it, it's still genuinely kind of fun. There are some very spicy tech death style guitar solos across the record that I think are kind of interesting. There are also some very manic and glitchy kind of Code Orange style riffs and passages here and there that make this thing feel a little bit more tense, a little bit more like, whoa, something freaky's about to happen, you know? It kind of puts you on edge. And in general, the production of this thing is pretty great. I mean, this is such a dense, beefy, muscular record. The percussion in particular is just pulverizing. But as I've said before on the Metal Meltdown, brutal does not automatically mean good. And while the music is consistently brutal, it's not always, in my opinion, consistently good. So much of this material is so repetitive, so formulaic, so dependent on the tropes of deathcore and nu metal. I mean, sure, the extra little bits and spices I mentioned help, but not enough to the point where I'm like, wow, this is such a bold and flavorful and dynamic record. There's so much going on here. Not enough to the point where it can break the monotony of listening to the exact same cookie-cutter, ham-fisted metalcore, deathcore breakdown over and over and over again. And I mean it, folks. Whatever you picture in your head as like a definitive deathcore breakdown is what I hear consistently across the entirety of this record. My fucking god. On top of that, I feel like Slaughter to Prevail's biggest priority is selling their image rather than their music. So much of this album, lyrically, conceptually, aesthetically, boils down to we're Russian, we're tough, we kick ass, and fuck you if you disagree. It's so hyper-masculine, so desperately trying to show off how brutal and tough and powerful it is, that often I find myself just kind of wincing and chuckling at it. At its best, it can sometimes remind me of the meat and potatoes college frat boy hardcore of God's Hate, and at its absolute worst, it can remind me of the cringeworthy antics of Attila and Amur and even Limp Bizkit, particularly with some of those whinier, angstier cleans and those frantic vocals. There's a particular moment in the track You're Only where Alex Terrible sings out, "Please shut your fucking mouth," which is then immediately followed by a series of incoherent, guttural babbling, and I found that genuinely, unironically kind of hilarious. Ultimately, I think I'd give this a 2.5 out of 5, and not a particularly enthusiastic one at that. It's okay, you know? It's competent. It's briefly entertaining, but even in these moments, hypothetically would not possibly rise above, like, maybe a 3. Maybe. There's a lot to admire about the production of this record, and there's no arguing whatsoever with the utter passion, heart, and soul consistently on fucking display here. These guys are performing with an urgency that I feel is consistently lacking from the deathcore genre nowadays, but unfortunately none of that really translates into consistently good music. Consistently brutal music, yes, but not consistently good. I'm sure there are legions of fans who will and perhaps already have fallen head over heels in love with this thing, and honestly, more fucking power to ya. But me personally, at this point in 2021, I'm looking for a little bit more character and creativity from the deathcore genre. Maybe if I was still a teenager, this endless barrage of angst and edge and vulgarity and brutality would have been appealing, but not now. I had some fun with it, but not to the point where, again, I would give it anything higher than a 2.5 out of 5. It's okay. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately in case you haven't already. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day. Say bye, Chompy. He's got little arms. See you later, folks.